Let's go.
All right, we're live. All right,
Hey.
awesome. Hey,
Yeah.
what's up, everyone?
What's
In
going
this
on?
chat room or chat room, YouTube room. What's up, everyone in the Zoom call? Thank you, everyone, for tuning in to Leadership Roundtable Volume 2. I did a poll this morning. It seems like most people want us to keep the name, so we'll keep it for now. But first things first, welcome back, Josh.
Welcome.
Thank you, guys. Thank
Yeah.
you. I survived a plane ride during a pandemic.
Not just any plane ride, a cross-country plane ride.
Yes, a cross-country plane ride with one layover in ATL.
Yeah, well,
Man.
tell everyone that's watching and will watch what flying during a pandemic is like. I'm actually really curious.
Same.
All right. So airports are generally pretty empty right now. I mean, there's still like a good amount of people, but just nowhere close as like what we're all probably used to at the airports and stuff like that. Even today, I was at ATL and I was trying to go get Starbucks for coffee because I needed my coffee fix. And then I probably went to the biggest portion, the biggest terminal in ATL, and it was so empty. And it was eerie. It's like, and then like ATL, they have this cool thing where you can take the subway. They have a subway built underneath the airport. And I'm like the only one riding it down below. And it's just like, wow, this is what it feels like if it's the end of the world and I'm the only last human being on Earth.
Yeah, how many people were in your plane? How many people were in the plane?
So the first leg of the flight from Sacramento to Atlanta, I asked the flight attendant, she said there was 50 people on the flight. It was a big flight because it's like a cross-country flight. So there's maybe only one person per row, maybe two at max.
Oh, wow.
So it's pretty good. And then the second flight, it's like a smaller connecting flight. So it's like 2 seats and then 3 seats. And that had about 70 people. And then because it's like a smaller plane, you're like literally next to people. So there's no social distancing on that plane.
That sucks.
But yeah, I mean, luckily I was with my youth group student, Tyler. So, I knew that he was okay. So hopefully he's okay. But I would say this, one thing that I was pretty shocked about was just with how serious the pandemic is. You would think that if you're going to travel on a plane, you would put on masks, right? On the first flight, I would say it was 60% not wearing masks and 40% wearing masks.
That's crazy.
That's crazy.
And for a second, I thought I was the crazy one for having a mask on because all these other people weren't having masks. And on the second flight, it was switched. I would say 60% had masks on and 40% didn't. So I don't know what people are thinking, but some people, I guess, are not like, they're not scared. They're not scared of it, or they don't give a damn about this pandemic. I was confused. But
yeah, I'm confused too. Yeah.
Did you get any looks?
Is what getting worse?
No, did you get any looks?
Oh, did I get any looks?
Yeah.
No, I didn't get any looks in that sense. But like, I don't know. These people just were not wearing masks at all, and they didn't even look concerned. And I was like, what's going on? What's going on, Lord?
Maybe they have it already. So.
Yeah, don't they do testing when you get on or something?
No, they don't.
Oh, shoot.
Oh, wow.
They just have a sign at the front of the entrances of airport. Well, at least when I enter Sacramento, and they just have it in the sign saying like, hey, if you have a fever, if you're coughing, just don't even risk coming onto the flight. Like, just but they don't have any testing. Yeah. But I would say this.
That's crazy.
One cool thing from the trip, obviously there's a lot of fear still, and there's like people are like very cautious with everything. There's a lot of like me versus them mentality. Like you can see it, right? And then, you're just caught in that atmosphere for like a couple of hours. And then we're online getting Shake Shack. Oh my gosh, guys, I had Shake Shack for the first time. But we're Shake Shack. And then there was a woman behind me, and she was a stewardess from another flight. And she was like gloved up. She was masked up and everything. And, but rather than the look of fear that everyone has, or the look of suspicion that everyone has, she was actually communicating with her eyes, and she was like joyful and happy, and she was just like, hey, like, how's it going? And for me, I was like, oh wow, even during this time of pandemic, like we can still communicate love, we can still communicate like just relationship and community in this time. So I was like, oh, that's pretty interesting that like even just from her look of her eyes, I was able to like feel human again, if that makes sense. So
that's awesome.
yeah.
Yeah, more importantly, no upgrades then, huh? There's too many people on the planes.
There was too many people on the plane to even get upgrades.
Ah,
That's crazy. But welcome back.
Thank you.
I mean, you have a story to tell your kids. Because I'm not flying. I'm not gonna fly during this time. You know what I mean? So yeah, welcome back. How's everyone
Good
else
to be
been?
back.
Yeah, how's everyone else been this week? I don't know how many weeks it's been in, shelter in, lockdown, quarantine. But how's everyone else?
well, it's been since the beginning of April, right? That they started to place the stay-at-home orders and stuff.
I think
End
so,
of
like the
March?
mandatory. I don't even remember
Yeah.
anymore.
Dang, so it's
I think
been
it was
about like
before.
3 weeks. Oh, was it before?
I think so.
No, it was like in March. It's been 4 weeks now. I think 4 or 5 weeks.
Wow.
Yeah.
Man.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, what would you guys say has been the biggest change that you've experienced personally during this time? Like, what's like the biggest thing that's changed for you? 1 month, like, because don't most studies say like it takes like 21 days to build a habit and stuff too?
Yeah.
So what's been like the biggest change for you guys?
For me, I think I might have shared this last week, but I think the new normal for our household has been spending family time, like being around the family. So if you're not in a close proximity within the family, or if everyone's kind of just together watching TV and you're not there, then it feels off. So I feel like the new normal is eating with the family, spending time with the family, and so I'm kind of intrigued. I'm excited or intrigued to see what it'll look like once we start working again, the family dynamic. Yeah.
Interesting.
I think something I feel a lot is like the working remotely portion. Just because I used to work from home every now and then, when we were in the office actually. But then now it's weird because literally everyone's working from home, and then this past week, like we were having meetings, and then there's like so many distractions because people have their kids, and then their kids are like climbing on their laps, and then for me, I realized at that point, like, oh, like it's just their kids climbing on their laps. It wasn't anything weird. And then that's when I was like, oh wow, like I'm getting like really used to this, that this is like the new normal now. Like all the distractions from working from home for everyone. That's like, it's like a normal thing now. So
Yeah.
I mean, I've been hearing from people who have kids, at least from people I heard, like the online schooling just ain't working for a lot of people. Yeah, like they're not a fan of it, I guess. I guess no one's been trained for something like this, right? So
Yeah.
a lot of different new normals.
Yeah.
I think for me, the biggest change has been my sleep, actually. I can't say if it's for the better or worse because like, I still actually have to work every now and then because of our family's essential business. But I just have been having a hard time sleeping in general. So I feel like that's been like the biggest change for me personally. So sometimes rhythms are hard to get, but just trying to navigate that. I don't know how I'm going to go back to like regular over an hour commute to the city and back, I don't know if I can handle that, but I feel like that's something I've been going through personally through this quarantine. What about
Hey,
you,
but you
Josh?
said yesterday.
Yeah.
Sorry. You said yesterday on your way back home on the GWB there was traffic, huh?
Yeah, there was traffic. It was like,
wow.
I've never experienced traffic, so it was like so weird. Because I'm used to going into the city in like 25 minutes now. Before it was like 75 minutes. And I mean, it wasn't bad traffic. I think there was only like 10 extra minutes, but it was because there was like some motorcycle being towed away. I don't know if there was an accident or what it was, but I was like, what is this? This is, that's when I was like, wait, why are there so many cars that there's traffic, But yeah, Josh, what about for you? I know you just gonna have a new rhythm coming all the way back to the East Coast, but what's been quarantine like for you so far? Or what changes have you experienced?
What changes have I experienced? To be honest, I haven't experienced that much change because I feel like my life was quarantine style anyways. If I'm being completely honest, I guess I just do have a lot more time now. But I think like for me, it's hard to navigate because I think there are moments in the days where certain things come up within myself. And like me being a huge feeler, it takes a long time for me to like sift through and let the emotions take their toll. And it's been kind of frustrating for me because like that, certain times, certain days, whatever I'm dealing with can kind of take me out for the whole day. And I like, as like deeper things are coming out, it's just like, yeah, it's pretty. So sometimes my rhythms are disrupted during this quarantine. That's what I found out. So yeah, I don't know if that makes sense for you guys, but
no, I mean, that's what I was trying to say too. I think you eloquented, that's not even a word, but eloquented it better than me. But like, yeah, disruption in rhythm. But yeah, how do you feel like, you know, all of us are leaders, and I would say leadership isn't based on, you know, a title or position, but it's based on influence, right? All of us are leaders in different capacities. How do you feel like your leadership has changed in the midst of this pandemic?
That's a great question. For me, I just feel like when I was in California, I was quarantined with just my roommates. Shout out to Eric, if you're watching this in California.
Ex-roommates now.
Ex-roommates now, yeah. But I was just with them mainly. And I think for them too, their whole life shifted because they're working for DoorDash and Uber and stuff like that. And then now they're working from home. And a lot of things started coming up for one of my roommates particularly. And just a lot of fear, anxiety. He was just having anxiety attacks for like 2 nights in a row. And I think just in that moment, it's like just ministering to him, helping him find his like, you know, strengthening himself in the Lord, helping him to realize like, no, like God's with him and stuff like that. And I think that's just what I've seen grow in my leadership during this time, helping people not give into fear, but be centered in who they're meant to be in God. So even though it's just one person, but that's how I've been seeing it.
Yeah, but I mean, I think that's what leadership is, right? It's just whoever's within your sphere of influence, even if it's one person, if it's your roommate, you know, we all have the capacity to influence in a positive way. So that's awesome. That's leadership right there.
Yeah, that's good, bro.
Yeah.
I think one of the ways that my leadership, you know, is changing, or one thing I'm realizing is similar to Josh. I think during this time, I've been a little bit more intentional about reaching out to, I guess, people a little bit more younger than me, college students around that age, where I don't know if they necessarily have, I don't know what the word is, but I don't know if they can necessarily figure out how to navigate through this. You know, we're all figuring it out together. So I've just been checking up on them, making sure they're doing okay, and then trying to give them some more perspective on how do you kind of use this time more wisely, you know, so it doesn't go to waste, especially as college students and whatnot. And so that's just something that pops up into my mind. And I think, I'm just trying to influence them towards a more positive way, taking advantage of, you know, some of the benefits that can come out of this.
Yeah.
And so, yeah.
I mean, if I could plug another video that's on our YouTube channel of the regional prayer meeting. It's not our prayer meeting, but it's something we're helping to facilitate. Danny gave a powerful word, so go check it out.
Danny, from your check-ins with like college kids around the college age and people around the college age and stuff like that, what's like the general thing that you've been sensing from them in terms of how they're processing? Like, you know, like I'm sure there's a wide range of stuff, but like generally, what are like one or two things that people around that demographic are experiencing through this?
Yeah, it's actually pretty varied. A group of people that I've been talking to, for them, they're facing disappointments because they felt very excited for what God wanted to do in their colleges and what was leading up to it. So they felt very excited, but to see it all come to a close right away, I think for some of them, they had to face the disappointment, which I was just trying to help them process a little bit more. So for a group, it's disappointment. For another group, it's just uncertainty. Like, what do I do? You know, like, what do I do during this time? I find myself just, you know, binge watching and doing different things, but what am I supposed to do? What am I supposed to do that'll fulfill me? And so giving that group perspective on how to really take advantage of it. And so I do find that it's varied. Yeah.
Yeah, that's good to know. I was just curious.
Yeah. I don't talk to any college kids, so.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, there's definitely a lot of different adjustments, I guess, in like like a practical sense where it's just like communication wise has to change, like frequency, like meetings, catching up with people. It just has to change in like, I guess, a more digital way, which it's not so unfamiliar, but I think it's just become like more frequent. But then I think something I'm, kind of voicing or communicating more is just kind of like the sensitivity around this time. And I think something I've been thinking about is just like ways to adjust like during this time. So even at work, something I've been talking about with my manager is like, for her, she wants to get certain things done, but I'm like, oh, I'm just trying to be sensitive to like, the people that could be going through things, and we have like dialogue in that way. So I feel like there's been more of that like between my coworkers and even like church groups.
That's good. I know for me, I think, I guess no one knew like what to really expect with this coronavirus and to what extent. But I think for me, beginning of the year, just kind of going really slow and even taking a break from social media and stepping away, I feel like has actually helped me be able to steward this time better when it comes to leadership. I feel like just because I feel like Kevin, you just said, like everything's more digital now because you have to be. And I felt like that time away kind of helped position me to be able to steward, what little influence we have, the platforms, the mediums, and all of that to kind of leverage it. So for me, I think one of the questions I asked myself or wrestled with myself as this pandemic was happening is, what kind of leader do you want to be in this moment? Because I think this is a moment where leaders are either proven or they, you know, fade to the background, because this is a time when we need leadership and something. So I think my time away from social media going slow has kind of helped give me energy, I guess, for this moment. And that's part of the reason why we're even doing something like this to help people. And it's been cool because we've already received a few different testimonies and stuff. So, that was very encouraging. One final question before we head into the main bulk of the topic on overcoming fear. How do you feel like our team has changed with this pandemic?
It's funny because I feel like our team is meeting up more now.
That's what I was thinking too.
Yeah, like, what do we have? We have like our monthly meeting, right? Where we're trying to get stuff done. And then we have our weekly leadership prayer meeting.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have this meeting.
Yeah.
And then we have individual IGs going on throughout the week. Yeah, I feel like we're meeting up more than ever.
Yeah, which I think is interesting, because I guess even up until I guess Zoom like kind of blew up, Josh wasn't in any of our leadership meeting, like ever since he went to Cali. But once pandemic started, Josh started coming back to our leadership meetings too. So it's been pretty interesting. But then that's funny because he could have always then been a part of it.
Yeah. For real.
We could have always
Why do we
done it
think
like
of
this.
that?
I don't know.
Man.
I mean,
Sorry,
also,
Josh.
I think the time difference was a huge thing because you guys actually still had full schedules during that time, but then now like all of our times are freed up. So
oh yeah, that's true. Everyone's schedule is a lot more flexible.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like even as a ministry, I mean, I think like even in terms of what we were doing to help serve the region, I mean, our main thing was our monthly gatherings, which we're not doing anymore, but I feel like we're doing more in this time too.
Yeah.
I feel like as a ministry, we've actually grown in like connections and resources at this time.
Yeah.
And I think even with partnering with the regional prayer meetings, it's like, a network of leaders that maybe we wouldn't have been able to have a chance to connect with unless it was like just something super planned and intentional. But it's just kind of happened like organically. And I think even with all the like IG lives too, you got to interview, like all these people, and it's just like who would have, like, we couldn't have done that at like a gathering, you know, like no one's gonna just sit there and watch people, you know, interview each other, but we get to do something like that now. So
yeah, I mean, I wonder, like, once quarantine is over, I wonder if we could even do IG lives, because I don't know who would watch. Like, everyone's gonna be out, you know. Like, I miss going out to eat, you know. So, stuff like that. But
and I even wonder if the busy factor coming back into it once quarantine is over will, I guess, this get rid of or get in the way of what's going on right now, you know, with the whole IG live, the Zoom meetings.
Yeah,
I'm gonna be a little sad.
Yeah, maybe this will stop too.
No.
Maybe this is the last one. Just kidding. Yeah. But yeah, so I just wanted to invite everyone into just some conversations, like us being real, and because I think everyone feels these things in this time, obviously, but I want to kind of transition into the bulk of, or at least the main topic. We're trying different formats. This is how we're going. So we'll see. Give us feedback. But kind of based on what people were asking and talking about last week, we kind of, felt like this week we wanted to focus on overcoming fear. And I think it's something that everyone has to go through. And I think it's something that everyone is needing to go through, especially in this time. I would love to start off by asking everyone here to, if there's a story that you could think of where you had to overcome fear yourself. Like, give us an example where maybe it's a ministry thing, maybe it's for work, family, relationship, whatever it is. If you could share a story or an example of you overcoming fear. Danny's smiling. I don't know why.
I'm reminded of your story.
Of my story?
The bagel story.
Should I go first then?
Yeah, Christian, why don't you go first?
Yeah, go for it.
It might not be topped. But
That's true. That's true.
I mean, it's kind of a silly story. I actually shared it yesterday on IG Live I did with Michelle. It was really awesome. But I remember a few years ago, I went to get a bagel at my favorite place right before work. So it was early in the morning. I was waiting in line, and then maybe like two people in front of me or something, like one or two people in front of me, there was a girl there. It was a girl because she had long hair. All right, but I'll stop anyways. She had long hair, and this isn't my personality, like, at all. But for whatever reason, I was like, I should ask this girl out on a date. Like, I don't ever think that normally when I go out, especially not early in the morning before I've had my coffee or anything like that. But for whatever reason, I'm like, I should ask this girl out. And then as soon as I had that thought, I'm like, man, what am I talking about? That's so weird. Like, man, I don't even know what she looks like because I'm like literally behind her in line. So I'm like wrestling through this thing. She grabs her bagel, and then she's going out, and I'm like really wrestling. I'm like, man, did I blow it? Did I mess it up? So I prayed, right? What I do in moments when I don't know what to do, I say, God, give me a sign, right? I'm sure all of us have done that. I was like, God, if you're in this and you want me to ask her out on a date, then for whatever reason, she'll be waiting outside, right? As soon as I prayed that prayer, I kid you not, she walks back into the bagel store all the way to the front, and she says to the worker, like, hey, can you remake my sandwich because you forgot ketchup or something? And then I was like, oh my gosh, is this a sign? and this is, in that moment, I remembered what one of my mentors told me. He told me this. He says, whenever you're afraid, do the thing you're afraid to do. And I was like, I hate that man. You know what I mean? That's what he told me. Like, if you're fearful to do something, he's like, that's your opportunity to actually do it. So because I was fearful, I was like, all right, I need to do this. So I'm like waiting for my order. She grabs her order. She walks out. I'm like, oh, I hope, I prayed again. I'm like, God, I pray that she didn't leave yet. So as soon as I walk out, I see her in her car eating her breakfast. Now, that's abnormal because normally if you get your food, you go on your way or whatever. But for whatever reason, she was sitting in her car in the parking lot, eating the bagel. So I'm like, I can't run away from this moment. I'm afraid. I'm nervous. I'm like, this is weird. And this is where it's like crazy. So I walk towards her car. She's eating her bagel, like looking down. Like she's like, you know, she's not thinking anyone's gonna approach her in her car, right? So she's eating her bagel, and then she looks up, and we meet eyes as I'm walking towards her car. It's like so awkward. And when she sees me walking towards her car, she has this look of like fear, like what the hell? Like, why is this guy walking towards my car? As soon as I saw her face and that look of like OMG, what's wrong with this guy? I walked past her car, circled all the way around, and walked back to my car. And I sat in my car, and I was like, well, what just happened? God, why did these things happen when I prayed if this was going to be the result? And that's when God spoke to me, and he said, Sam, I want you to know that what type of guy you are is that if you pray and you know that it's me, you're willing to do it no matter how afraid or foolish you might look. So yeah, that's my one funny story, overcoming fear.
Yo, we had a great meeting. Hope everyone does well. We can't top that story.
Good night, everyone.
Top that story.
Good night, everyone. I'm gonna go mourn. I'm gonna go mourn rejection and fear of man.
Oh man.
Yeah.
Her side.
How scared did she look in the car when you guys made eye contact?
It wasn't like fear, but it was like, what the hell look? You know what I mean? It wasn't like...
Was she Korean?
Go ahead.
Yeah, she was Korean. She was Asian.
Asian, okay.
Yeah, she was like eating in her car like an anime character, like a, you know what I mean? Like a squirrel, like not even looking up. She looks up, her eyes like meet my eyes, and she had this look of like, what the hell is this guy doing? Like, why is he walking towards my car? So it was kind of like not mad afraid, but like, OMG, what the heck? A little bit of disgust and a little bit of fear.
Oh man.
Yeah. It was an Asian.
That's a great story.
Oh,
that's a great story.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is girls' eating like a squirrel anime style? Is that considered cute or not cute?
If she said yes, she would have been cute.
Okay. All right.
Whoa.
But yeah, I don't even know what she looks like. Maybe she's come to pursuit and then stopped coming once she realized it was me. I mean, who knows?
Yeah. Oh man.
Yeah, I know some girls who stopped by but then left midway.
To a pursuit?
To a gathering. Yeah. Maybe it was one of
RP Sam.
Maybe that was it.
That's a great story though.
Yeah. What about you guys? Overcoming fear, ministry, family, whatever it might be.
I have one. It's I guess it's like more so about like overcoming fear of like making a decision or a big decision kind of thing. But I don't want to go into too much details, but pretty much it's the story of how I approached my now fiance's parents.
She's watching, by the way. She's watching.
She just commented.
Yeah. I mean, I kind of talked to her about it today, but yeah, I mean, I'll try to be wise telling this story.
Yeah, because this is on the internet forever, and
yeah, no, hold on, let me just pray real quick. Yeah, but so pretty much, you know, we're talking about marriage, so yeah, she just texted me saying that she's watching, but then pretty much, you know, we're talking about marriage, so it gets to the point where, you know, I have to, you know, talk to her parents, and I don't know if that kind of tradition is, you know, gone at this point. It's just, I think it's just out of respect and just honor that I feel like that's just something like, you know, basic level that needs to be done. So, I mean, even just thinking about it, like I was like scared to even approach it just because her dad lives in Maryland because of his business. And so the day that, you know, we went to go hang out with them, you know, we made lunch plans. We bought like a nice bottle of wine. Like I had to overcome fear in talking to strangers and by asking the clerk, like, hey, what's a good, you know, bottle of wine? And then he's saying all these things and I had to pretend to know what he's talking about. And so it's two fears in one. But so we had a nice bottle of wine, a nice bouquet of flowers for her mom. And we, choose like a, expensive lunch spot so I could try to impress them. And then we get there, and we're having lunch. And to be honest, like I'm already like shaking, like my voice is like shaking, like just saying like 안녕하세요 to them, like hello in Korean, and like it's just like tough. And then on top of that, because they don't really get to see each other too much, they're just like catching up with Anne. And then for me, I'm just like sitting there and I'm like, oh man, I want to like talk to them, but it's just hard for me to even like, because I'm so bad at Korean. And so that's even like adding to more and more of like my fear of even like asking them the question. And then there's just like random events that happened during lunchtime where it was just like, it made things worse. Like the dish that I ordered, it was like this like Chinese food style like dish. And then, mind you, this is like a nice like steakhouse. And then they bring me like this Chinese like wok bowl thing with like wooden chopsticks. And then it's from there, I'm already like, oh my God, like this is a disaster. And then I'm trying to call the waiter to get more seltzer water. And then, what, like sometimes when like, I don't know, your voice just doesn't cut through the air and then they don't hear you. And then it's just like super embarrassing. Like that happened a bunch of times too. And it's just like, things are just getting worse and worse. And it's just leading up to just more and more fear, like on top of, me already being afraid. But, we get to the bakery after, lunch, and I'm bringing things up, and, I had to just overcome fear and just go through with it. And I'm going to leave out, a lot of the details, but to be honest, it didn't go that well. It didn't, I mean, we're engaged now, so it's not like, we had to break up or anything like that, but
yeah. Everyone write congrats in the comments.
Congrats.
Yeah, everyone write congrats in the comments.
Yeah, but pretty much, it was a terrible 4-hour drive back, from Maryland. But then I think around that time, like I learned a lot about overcoming fear. And I think it's like when you have to go through fearful situations, it reveals a lot about you. And I think in that moment, it revealed so much about, me and how much I cared about what people think, and how even things like that, being misunderstood, made me feel so like small or like not valued. And I think, it was only like through fearful situation, like that I had to go through to make a decision, like to actually see that my value isn't like contingent upon, like anything but, what God says. And I think on the other side of fear, it brings you like into like a new territory. And I think if I hadn't like talked to them, I wouldn't have been brought, like to the next part where I had, a new situation where I had to go deeper with God. And I think it's like, that's when I realized like, about, me, being in a better situation after the fear, but understanding like whose hands I'm in, despite the fearful situations I'm in. So
Wow.
that's what I learned.
Yeah, that's good.
Wow. Wait, am I breaking up? Sorry, it's a little laggy on my end.
It was too, a little bit.
Oh, was it? Okay,
really?
okay.
Yeah, but I think it's fine now.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's fine now.
Josh, do you have a story up in your mind that you want to
Yeah, I
share?
have a story. Story. Why are you guys laughing?
You sounded
Well,
bitter.
you said it.
You sounded
Nah,
bitter.
I have a story. I think this was maybe about end of 2016. I am 25. And I think for me, one of the biggest fears of my life was pursuing a girl. And I remember I was like processing this with PSAM. I was like, PSAM, I feel like in order for me to become a man, I need to ask a girl out. And PSAM was like, yo, go for it. And so heading into January 2017, I think my New Year's goal was that, you know what? I'm going to go on 5 dates with 5 different girls in this year. And then I'm just gonna be bold and
everyone write
brave.
#player. Just kidding.
I'm gonna be bold. I'm gonna be brave. I'm gonna overcome my biggest fear of pursuing after a girl. And so, man, I just kept pushing it off. January, February, March. I shared this goal with certain people, and people coming up to me and be like, "Yo, how many days did you go on? Like, let's get on it, you know?" And then come around May, At that time, there was someone that I was interested in, and then we were taking the same class together, and then at the end of the semester, we were just like meeting up for the one last time and stuff like that. And then at this time, I was like, you know what? Today's the day. I'm gonna go for it. I'm gonna ask this person out. And so like we met up, we caught up, whatever, and then we're about to part ways, and my knees are shaking. I'm spilling like coffee on the textbooks that I was supposed to return back. I'm like making a mess. But then right before we leave, I just grabbed her and I was like, hey, like, I know this is really weird right now, but I would love to take you on a date next week. If you're free, just like think about it, don't freak out. And then, you know, she obviously freaked out because she did not see it coming at all. And then I just left it at that. I was like, you know what? You don't even have to tell me right now. Just tell me later. Just text me later. And then she was like, okay, let me text you later. And then, you know, we just parted ways after that. But man, after that, I don't have any fear of, I think, pursuing a girl anymore. Like I realized like after doing that, it's not really a big deal as I always thought in my head and in my heart, right? I was like, oh man, like what if I look like a fool? What if I get rejected? And I think behind us the fear of rejection, right? But then like once you do it, you're like, once I got into my car, I even thought to myself, like, all right, let's say she says no, like, who cares, right? I still did it, and it's like I overcame that. And so even if she says no, I'm okay with it. I'm secure in that, and like whatever. So I think for me, at that point in my life, at the age of like 26, I think it was important for me in my journey of manhood, if I can say.
Wow,
Yeah.
wow,
That's good. It's good.
hey, that's a good story too, bro.
Yeah.
I have a story too. Seeing how it's all relationship stories, I wanna take it back 2008. When
When you were like 12? What are you talking about?
Hey, 13. 14. 2008.
Yeah, you were
just
14
got
years
into
old then?
movies.
I don't know. I was in 8th grade. Whatever age 8th grade is.
Yeah.
Start crying.
It's happening right now.
I thought you were gonna say 2018. I was waiting for the team to come out.
Oh man, it's funny. All right, 2008. True story.
Wait. This is how we know that this is live, unrehearsed.
That's true.
This is live. This is as live as you can get.
2008.
Filtered.
14 years old. Oh man, my eyes hurt now. But I was in 8th grade, and all throughout middle school, I had a crush. Stop laughing. This is a sad story, guys. Focus. All throughout middle school, I had a crush on this one girl. Literally all throughout the 3 years. And so by this point, everyone knew that I was interested in her. We had like the same group of friends. And I remember in 7th grade, I would write her letters because I was too afraid to talk to her in person. So I was mad cute, super romantic, but I would write letters, say, hey, how are you? Throw it at her desk. And ultimately, man, it never worked out. Never talked to her ever. She ended up having a boyfriend. Fast forward to guys. Fast forward to 8th grade. It's prom, which is like the last social event of the year. You know, me being a 14, 13-year-old, I was like, oh man, like I would love to talk to her at least once. Or even better, I would love to dance with her at least once. And so I went there all dolled up, dressed good and whatnot. And man, I just could not get myself to go near her at all. I couldn't get myself to talk to her. Then one of our mutual friends, she's a girl. At that time, she was like 5'8", so she's way bigger as an 8th grader. And so she looked me in the eye. She's like, Danny, come on, this is your last chance. You have to go. You have to go dance with her. Guys, I need to focus.
Is that when you were fearful? She was 5'8".
Yo, she scared the bajonkers out of me, man. So she comes up to me, she's like, Danny, to dance with her. Like, this is your last time. It's like it's your last chance. Oh, focus. So I'm like, all right. I couldn't get myself to do it. And so she looks me dead in the eye. And mind you, she's 5'8". At this point in my life, I'm like 4'11", 4'9". She looks me dead in the eye, says, Danny, all jokes aside, I love you so much. But if you don't dance with, I'm going to punch you right here in the dance floor and everyone's going to see you get punched. So I was like, do I choose getting punched and being embarrassed? Or do I choose asking a girl to dance with me and being embarrassed? So I was like, okay. So I went and I asked that girl to dance with me. And we danced for like 2 seconds. That was it. And I never talked to her again in my life. Wait, why did it only last 2 seconds? Wait, why did it only last?
How is it even a dance?
Because there were teacher staff going around the dance floor, making sure people didn't dance too close. And apparently we were dancing too close. But I was too scared to even approach her.
Thanks everyone for tuning in. God bless.
This is over.
That's my fear story. So I ended up overcoming fear because this 5'8" girl, she made me more afraid.
The true tale of David and Goliath.
I hope this video goes viral.
Nah, she can't see this. Homegirl can't see this.
There's mad people that can't see this video.
Oh god.
Kevin's entire in-laws
funny.
can't see this. Maybe we should take this down. Josh's ex can't see this. We don't know who that girl was that I approached. Anyone? Maybe we should just stop this.
Man,
Yeah.
that was fun.
It's that funny.
I think that was more for us than
Yeah.
anyone else.
Yeah. Guys, this is what our team is like. Welcome to Pursue NYC. But yeah, to be honest, I don't know how to transition now.
Me neither.
Yeah, I don't know what to do.
Yeah.
But I remember a story on overcoming. I don't know if it was overcoming fear for me, but I think it was about risk. Because I think overcoming fear requires risk. It requires you going outside of your comfort zone. It requires you, taking steps of courage. I think, courage isn't not being afraid, but it's moving in the opposite spirit.
Wow.
It's moving in the direction opposite of that which you're afraid of. So I don't think courage is the absence of fear, but I think it's truly overcoming fear. So I remember this story. I don't know, Josh, if you remember it, but it was one of the regional worship nights that we used to do a few years ago. And at the end, we were just praying for people that needed healing for different things. And I remember, Josh, you had a word of knowledge for something. I forgot what it was for. It was like was something having to do with someone's organs, to be honest. I don't remember. And you told me that word of knowledge. And then I was going to go up, but then I felt like I couldn't give that word of knowledge because if I said it, there was no risk attached to it. Like for me to say it would be like, it requires zero faith for me to say it because there's no risk for me. So I actually went to Josh and I told him, you have to give this because there has to be risk to it. Josh, do you even remember that?
I don't. I honestly don't even remember that.
Yeah. All right, then that's the end of that story. Let's go back to Danny's dance story.
I'm trying to think. Do I remember that?
Maybe
actually.
It was at
I think it was
Harvest
at Tom
Church.
Crandall's. Yeah. Was it at Harvest Church?
Yeah, because I think by the time Tom Crandall did it, like all of us were used to giving words of knowledge and failing, but this was like one of the earlier regional worship nights we did, and I remember you telling me a word about someone's thing, and then I knew I could do it, but I felt like Josh had to do it because if you gave it, that's when there would be risk.
Wow.
That's when it would require overcoming fear, because I had no fear like in giving it, but I felt like there had to be that. And thankfully there was someone there who actually had a relative going through that. So
Oh yeah, okay. I think I remember that moment.
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that
Yeah,
was
I
my
think-
thought process. I mean, I didn't like share it with you. I don't know if I shared it. I think I was just like,
Nah,
Josh,
you never did.
yeah,
Yeah,
but that
this is
was
the
my
first time.
thought process actually. 'Cause
Gotcha.
I was like, I could do this, but there's no overcoming fear part of it. There's no risk. There's no faith. I'm just literally repeating what someone told me. But I felt like if Josh, you went and did it, that was what was needed to release that breakthrough. Yeah.
That's actually pretty funny, because I feel like it's not only that moment. I feel like you've done that multiple times to me, or maybe even for the rest of the team. But you know, like from my perspective, I think like when it's ministry time, I hear something and I think I pass it on to you, just because like there's fear in my heart too, right? It's like, man, I don't know if I heard God correctly, but hey, if P. Sam says it, I'm sure his faith will bring about something, you know. But then yeah, there's been multiple times like that where like I would tell you and you would be like, oh, all right, but then yeah, you would bring the mic back to me and be like, hey, I think you should do it. And then I think I've learned through that, it's like, yeah, just there is that natural fear in the process, but you're right, something has to be on the line, like something has to be at risk, right? And that's why there's the fear there. And it's, I think now that I think about it too, oftentimes those moments brought more breakthrough than when there wasn't fear, quote unquote. Yeah, like fear, if that makes sense. Yeah. So yeah, that's pretty interesting.
Yeah. So that was my thought process in it. And now that you say it, I think, you know, because we talk about leadership in this too, I think for me as the leader, all of us are leaders, but like, the mentor figure, I guess, in this group, I feel like it's my responsibility to help people that I'm leading also take those risks and steps of faith as well.
Wow.
So I remember even when we did that joint thing with what's that art group? I forgot. I can't remember their name right now.
The Represent movement?
Yeah, the Represent movement. When we did that joint like spoken word thing, they wanted someone from our team to do the salvation message at the end. And then I asked Kevin to do it, who is the only non-seminarian, has preached the least, to do it, because I felt like not only did I feel like Kevin was the right person to do it, but I felt like there was that faith factor that Kevin would add to this moment, because it would require more faith from Kevin to do it, if that makes sense.
Wow.
Yeah. So I guess that's part of leadership, is always helping other people create opportunities where they have to overcome fear as well. So yeah, so that's one thing that I wanted to bring up, is helping other people do that too, but obviously creating an atmosphere where there's safety. Like if it didn't work, like there's no like punishment or anything. But I think now at this point, if any one of us was like, hey, we want you to do this, I don't think anyone has a problem stepping up more.
Yeah.
Actually, I want to kind of talk about that event, actually. If I could just share my perspective that time. But I remember we were just in a circle before the event started, and we were just like praying, and they were like, oh, we just want someone from Pursuit to do ministry time at the end. And then I remember I was like just waiting. I was like, oh, I wonder like who's gonna do it, like Danny, Pastor Sam, or Josh. But then I remember Pastor Sam, you were like, Kevin, you should do it. And then I remember like throughout that event, I was just trying to like think of things like, oh, what should I say? Like, what would be good? Like, what would people respond to? Like, what's God saying? And the thing that kept pressing on my heart, at that time was like the salvation call. And then for me, I was like, oh, that's too weighty. Like, it's too much of a risk. I should just do something like, I don't know, like who wants to like forgive someone, or like, something everyone is kind of like can like respond to or whatever. But then I remember, like, even in the midst of that, like, for one, fear of public speaking, and then two, like fear of this like weighty message, I went ahead and I did it. And I think something really important, like that you just mentioned, is having like a safe, like safety net around you, like a safe community, because everyone, on our team, and including like the praise team, like Jay came up to me afterwards too, and you guys were all just like, Kevin, like that was such a good word, like that's exactly what I'm feeling in my spirit too, like I just want to affirm you that you're able to hear the voice of God. And I think in that moment, it did like so many things for me, like to overcome
Wow.
fear, and at the same time, like having the community around me to like raise me up after I took like a leap of faith. So
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome.
Wow.
So I mean, I think that's the thing, right? Every time you overcome fear, it is going to be challenging. It is going to be hard. It is going to take courage. But I think the point is, the more you do it, overcoming fear isn't an act, but it becomes part of your character. You know, it becomes part of your track record. It becomes part of like who you actually are, where you're not just someone who overcomes fear. You become a person that walks in courage.
Come
And
on.
I think
Wow.
that's part of the process in overcoming fears. It does take like stupid random stories we shared tonight. You know what I mean? Because I think we've all reached a place of maturity where, you know, let's say we did another event and Kevin was asked to give it. Kevin, I feel like it'll be a lot easier.
Yeah.
If we give words of knowledge, it'll be a lot easier. Approaching a girl at a bagel store is still hard though. You know?
That's hard for other reasons.
Yeah, that's hard for other reasons. But because I think, you know, when we first started off giving words of knowledge, going after healing in our gatherings, like there was so much risk. Where now if we fail, it's okay. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But the greater challenge then is, how do we then continue taking risks? One of the things that, you know, one of my mentors, someone who's influenced all of us, Martin Sanders, says like he seeks to succeed 70% of the time. Right? Because if he succeeds 100% of the times, that means he's not taking enough risks. And if he's only succeeding 50% of the times, that means he's being like not wise. You know?
Wow.
So he seeks to walk in this balance because, you know, and I think that's the tension, right? Like we're so used to giving words of knowledge and failing. Like I'm okay with that. The challenge is if I go to, for example, you know, just being honest, a conservative setting where they don't believe in that and I do it anyways. Like that's a little bit more fearful for me. But what are some of the ways you feel like are ways people can continually up the ante in overcoming fear?
Well, I kind of want to touch upon what you just shared right now. I think the part where you said we're okay with failing, I think that's a big part of the process. Because if I imagine like when we first started off our gathering and just being honest, like when you would put us on the spot to give words and stuff like that, and no one responds and you just missed it completely. I think failure hits you so hard in that moment, and there's a lot of introspection, a lot of shame, like, oh, you suck, like what the hell is wrong with you, know? But at this point of our journey, it's like I think we've taken enough risks and seen a lot of failure.
I think Josh is frozen.
Yeah.
He's frozen in an F. An F sound.
Have a lot of.
Now it's just like, oh.
Yeah, repeat it. You were frozen, bro.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. But now at this part of the journey, it's like when we miss a word or whatever, you know, and fear, you know, we still have to deal with that fear, but we're not like stuck in that cycle of introspection for too long. And it's just like, oh, like, yeah, I missed it. It's like, it's fine. I'm going to get the next one. Like, you know, so I love that part of the process, like just being okay with failure. I think that's like a huge crucial part.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's like that Winston Churchill quote, you know, someone could fact check me, but I'm trying to think of it. Success is never final. Failure is never fatal. It's the journey that counts. Right?
Yeah.
Something like that. Right? So I think that's a great point. Thanks, Josh, for coming back to that, because we are going to fail in the journey.
Yeah.
You know? And I think the real learning lesson is whether we make that failure a statement about who we are, or we make it a lesson. And if every failure is a lesson, then we'll never actually fail.
Oh, that's so good.
Yeah, so I think that's a great point. I forget what I first asked. Now
you asked how do we overcome, right? How do we overcome?
Yeah, or how do we continually raise the level of risk?
Level of risk.
Yeah. And that's something for us to all just wrestle with too.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm just thinking about it from the context of our team. And I just know that my level of risk is, what's the word? Like exponentially increased because of this team. So for example, PSAM would know an area of my life where I'm not risking enough. Or, Josh would know an area of my life where I'm not risking enough. Kevin would know an area of my life where I'm not risking enough. And so I think I personally wouldn't have enough self-awareness to know that yet. So to give an example, we're going to use the same example we've been using, but even with sharing a word in front of a group. I remember when I first started out, when PSAM started to give me the mic, I became super, super, what's the word, like introspective. And I would literally just repeat words that I've heard other people say in different settings. So I kid you not. So like we're going after healing, right? And I would remember someone giving a word back in Wyoming, Kansas City. And I would just repeat it verbatim because I knew how it sounded and I knew the response it garnered, But once that didn't work out, once that wasn't it, PCM would ask me to do different things. Yo, Danny, can you open up in prayer? I'm like, I don't know how to do that. I never did that. I don't know who to copy. Danny, can you preach? Like the first time I preached for Pursuit, I said, peace. I never preached. I don't know who to copy. And so I guess it's just different things like that. Being in a group or a team that you trust enough where they will help you risk more without falling into nothing. That they will actually support and have a safety net, if that makes sense. And so I think that's what's been super helpful for me,
Yeah, that's good. I mean, I think, because I think this is something I'm learning too, because I think for all of us, it was fearful to approach someone on the streets. It's like, hey, can I pray for healing because you're limping? You know what I mean? Like, I mean, I think there's a part where that never actually gets easy unless you're like Todd White or something. You know what I mean? But I think for me, it's like reading stories, like hearing testimonies of other people. So, we go after like simple things, like like Kevin was saying, like who here needs to forgive someone in their life? Like, oh my gosh, I'm so on point, And then you start giving like, who here has pain? Who here has, I think just reading other testimonies to help me know what's possible and then to go after it too. It's that passage in Revelations where, what is it? The testimony of Jesus is the spirit of prophecy. So I think for me, it's like reading greater testimonies, like reading more. And then if God did it before, then he could do it again. Yeah.
That's so good. That's so good.
But I kind of want to go back to what I said earlier, where it's like continually helping, because Danny, you mentioned within the context of a team. I think that's why it's so important, like helping people to develop a lifestyle of overcoming fear, and I think it's by positioning them. And as a leader, you equip other people to do that. And I think it's because I learned it from my leaders too. I remember going on missions, and then my pastor would be the one to ask me to preach in front of a school, or we'll go evangelizing on the streets, and in this random park in Latin America, he's like, Sam, you're preaching the message. I'm like, but pastor, you're fluent in Spanish. So I think it's things that we learn and we pass down. And I think people that are watching, it's like you get to model overcoming fear every time you do it, to your friends, to your family, to people you lead, people in your friend groups, in your small groups and stuff like that. And any other thoughts just on overcoming fear before we transition to answering a couple questions from people?
I guess maybe what success actually means, like success.
That's good.
Because I think a lot of people have like a fear of failure because they think that when they share a word and no one answers, it's a failure. But then I'm reminded of, where it says like faith is what pleases God.
Yep.
And I think if that's what pleases God and what we're trying to do is just please God, us taking the risk, in the midst of fear and even quote unquote like failing, like the word not connecting or whatever, it's still a success because we took a step in faith, which pleased God. And so I feel like that's considered a success. And I think once we shift our perspective, then we're able to take, I guess, more steps in risk, understanding that failure doesn't actually mean like failure.
Yeah, that's good.
Wow.
Yeah.
I think for me, when it comes to overcoming fear, and I know Dr. Rob Reamer, another key individual that's really been influential in our lives. I know he shares this story a lot, and he makes the statement, but he says fear will actually prevent you from fulfilling your prophetic destiny.
Mm.
And he uses the example of how Saul was afraid, King Saul, and he ended up hiding. But I think that's so true. I think it's, if I even think about my life, the moments that literally stopped me in my tracks was when I was afraid and I refused to go through fear and overcome fear, and literally stopped me in my tracks where I either had to make a U-turn or I got stuck, you know? And so I feel like the concept of overcoming fear, it really is a overcome or a bridge to actually you fulfilling your prophetic destiny, to
Mm.
to being all who God created you to be, to taking you where God wants you to go. And so I consider, when I think about fear, I consider it in many ways like a badge that you end up wearing around your
Mm.
belt. Once you overcome it, you have that belt. Now for your next battle, that badge actually helps you overcome that next battle. You get another belt. And so I kind of see it like that. I always see fear as a tool that you can use for your next battle, if that makes sense.
It's good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got an interesting question for all y'all, and maybe we can just answer really quickly. But if you can go back 5 years from now and tell yourself, hey, you're not gonna need to be afraid of this 5 years later, what would you guys say?
Oh,
That's good.
that's a
Yeah.
good question, bro.
For
I have to
me,
go
like for
back.
me, I would say, man, Josh, if you can go back 5 years from now, I wish I can tell you that what other people think about you isn't really that important, and you can
Yeah.
find freedom from that. Yeah.
It's good.
Mm.
I think it'd be the same thing for me, to be honest. Yeah, it's like a constant theme in my life, and I think even to this day, still there's still moments where, like it's a fear that I have, like fear of man. So I think I would tell myself that.
Yo, actually, for me too, I would tell myself that. No, for real. I think that is single-handedly the biggest fear that has stopped me the most in my
Same.
life, previous, where I let the opinion of other people impact me more, and so I would definitely say that to my 5-year previous self.
What about your eighth grade self? I'm just kidding.
That dance is only gonna last 2 seconds. It ain't worth it. That's what I would say.
Get punched.
Just
get punched. Get punched instead.
Get punched.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if I could tell myself, if I could go back in time 5 years and tell myself, don't be afraid of this, I would say, don't be afraid to go slower than you want to go. I think that's what I would say.
You want, for all our viewers, you want to elaborate on that?
What did I say? Don't be afraid to go, because 5 years from now, or 5 years ago, is what, 2015? That's pretty crazy. Because I guess when Pursuit started, like almost 6 years ago now, or 6 years ago now, there was a lot of potential. There was a lot of promises. There were a lot of prophetic words and destiny, and there still is. But I've always put this pressure, like it has to happen, like right away. We have to see this take place right away. Or, man, the destiny and the promises are so great, so grand. It must be for right now. And if we don't seize this moment and do it right now, then we'll forfeit it, or we'll lose it, or whatever. Wow. And I feel like I've had a lot of that fear or that pressure of, I got to make things happen, or things have to happen, but then the whole journey hasn't looked like that at all, like we start Pursue, we shared it last week, kind of the story, but then right away, within a few months, Josh goes to Africa for a year. Our worship team, our worship leaders go to Korea indefinitely. But then it's like, oh, but then what happened? And then like different things like that happens multiple times. And each time, I've always felt like, man, maybe I'm blowing it. Maybe I'm messing it up. Maybe I'm not a good enough leader, whatever it is. But I feel like that's what I would say. Don't be afraid of these different, quote unquote, what feels like delays or detours or roadblocks. It's actually part of the process, and God is still on time with His promise. So that's
good.
I think that's what I want to say. And one final thing I want to say to wrap up this time before we go into questions is this quote that was in my heart. Even, I guess when we first started, I think Lou Engle said it, but he says, "I'd rather die facing the giants than live content in the wilderness."
Come on.
And I feel like that to kind of, position our hearts when it comes to overcoming fear. Like, man, I'd rather die facing the giants. I'd rather die overcoming fear than live afraid, in comfort, in lack.
So good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, Danny, what are some questions people have been asking? Guys, if you're watching, feel free to ask questions right now, and we'll answer some.
Yeah,
right
I
now.
want to ask some of the questions that are more related to this topic, and then maybe you could go to other ones. But Monica asked, what are you guys fearful of? And what are some of the things the church is fearful of without needing to be?
What are some of the things we're fearful of?
Yeah, what are some of the things we're personally afraid of? And what are some things the church is fearful of without needing to be?
Yeah. I think I could answer the latter one. I think people are afraid of losing control. I think they're afraid of, and I feel like the reason why they don't need to be afraid of that is because the Christian life is a life of surrender. We're never called to control or fully understand.
That's good.
I think with that, people are afraid of the Holy Spirit. If we're just being real.
Yeah.
And I feel like there's no need to be. But I think those are the main issues that keep people stuck, is the fear of losing control and the fear of the Holy Spirit. And I think it's often rooted in, bad teaching, if I'm honest, and also a lack of unwillingness to look like a fool.
That's so good.
Yeah.
I want to touch up on the whole fear of the Holy Spirit, because once again, I'm reminded of a quote by Dr. Rod Reimer where he says, "Fear of the Holy Spirit is a tool by the devil to keep you and prevent you from the fullness of God."
Wow.
And so I think in many ways, fear literally is a tool by Satan. It is a hell weapon, if that makes
For
sense.
sure.
So
it's not of God. So
yeah. So I love that.
That's good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What am I personally afraid of? Yeah. What are you guys personally afraid of?
I think for me, I'm personally afraid of, this is like more my personal journey, but it might resonate with some people, but it's like, man, do I have what it takes? Like at this point in my life, do I have what it takes to be this type of leader, to be this type of son, to be able to provide this way, and stuff like that. Yeah. And so I think that's my personal fear. What was the second question? Like, what's the church not needing to be afraid of right now?
Yeah.
I think the church doesn't need to be afraid that if they don't entertain people at church, that people won't engage.
Oh, that's really good.
Yeah, I think there's a fear in the church that, like, oh man, we need to entertain people and I'm not sure. I'm sure that that's not their intention. Do you guys know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah.
I'm sure it's not their intention, but I think there is that fear. They're like, oh man, if we don't provide this for our church members, if we don't please them in this way, then they're not going to come in. And I just feel like, I think we got to kind of go back to basic discipleship and just kind of getting back to the roots of things. So
that's good.
I would say that.
I want to add another thing for the church. I feel like the church doesn't need to be afraid of sin.
Yo, say that one more time for the people in the back.
Come on. I wish this was IG Live. Right? This is when people would be sending hearts, but
all the hearts.
Yeah.
Come on.
I feel like the church doesn't need to be afraid of sin. I think we're called to hate sin, abstain from sin, but we shouldn't be afraid of it because it's already defeated. It's already been paid for.
Come on.
One thing I'm personally afraid of, if I'm really real in this very moment or season of my life, it's like a long story about how I started helping out my family business and just the different circumstances we've gone through in the last year and stuff. But a very real fear that I have is that I'm going to get stuck there. Like, if I'm honest, like, I'm afraid that God's never going to release me, because I know my ultimate destiny and purpose isn't in that field. I feel like I'm called to full-time ministry. And then there are times when I'm afraid like I'm never going to be able to move beyond this because of responsibilities and different things. So that's a very real fear that, you know, that I could have in this season.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, there's definitely people who heard your first part saying that church doesn't need to be afraid of sin, and they stopped right there, and they're writing blog posts right now.
They're unfollowing me on Instagram right now.
Man, Kevin, is there anything you want to say?
I mean, I think something. I'll just answer like the church one, but I think we are too afraid of the world, because I think we have like that like old covenant mindset where if we touch the unclean, that will be
That's
unclean.
good.
But I think in the New Testament with Jesus, what he did, it's when we touch the unclean, they become clean. So
Come on.
Yeah, come on. Dang. That's good too. They need to hear it.
Man, hearts. There's our hearts coming for you, Kevin.
We have some more questions. This one's coming from Jonathan. What would you do, or what should you do about someone in your life who introduces fear to you? So, for example, someone who comments about something you're doing without fear, but as soon as they comment it, fear paralyzes you. So I'm guessing it's what do you do when what do you do when there's people in your life that they're the one that actually introduce fear to you?
So like, what would be an example?
I guess he wrote, naturally you're unafraid, you're not afraid of the situation, but as soon as that person starts commenting on the situation, fear paralyzes you.
That's a really hard question to ask, because I feel like it's so situational.
Yeah.
I mean, I would say for one thing, the person that quote unquote introduced fear to you, is that kind of like someone I think you kind of have to evaluate if that's someone that you actually want as a voice in your life. Like I'm not saying like disregard them or whatever like that, but if it's like a little kid like saying like, hey, like why'd you sing like that, like you shouldn't sing like that, or something, like you know what I mean, like. So I think first evaluate the person to see if it's someone that you actually allow to speak in your life. And I think maybe kind of see where that fear came from too, because I don't believe it's solely that the person could put fear in you, but it's kind of like it must have triggered something in you. And I think you kind of have to reflect a little bit to figure out, oh, like I'm suddenly afraid. Is it because I'm afraid of what people think or something like that?
Yeah.
That's good, Kevin.
Yeah. I like that response. Yo, better than anything I could think of. That's awesome.
I hope Jonathan likes it.
I think he does. All right, we got another question from Zoe. She wrote, how can you differentiate human fear and spiritual fear? So human-driven fear versus spiritual fear. And I'm guessing human fear is also like soulish fear. Areas of the soul where you're afraid.
But is spiritual fear like a good fear?
Like the fear of the Lord fear, or like
the demonic fear?
Or demonic
fear. It doesn't
fear,
sound like it's a spirit. It's a
yeah,
fear
Zoe,
of
help us.
More of
how do you know if it's like a human fear, and how do you know if it's like a demonic attack fear? Is that what it is?
I guess so.
Please clarify, Zoe.
Yeah, should we do a leadership roundtable episode on demonic attacks?
Yeah, should we do a deliverance
on deliverance
through Zoom?
Like an online Zoom deliverance?
I won't be there.
It'll only be Josh.
Yeah, only
no.
Josh, that's you, bro.
I don't enjoy doing that. Differentiate between human fear and spiritual fear. Huh. Is she responding back? Is she giving any clarification by any chance?
I think there's like a delay, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna try to frame it from like, how do I know if it's like a natural human fear versus like a demonic fear? Like,
because I think we can all agree, but there are fear, like Kevin said, like where does that fear root from? And many
Yeah.
times it is gonna be the soul, where you haven't processed some stuff, fear of man, different things like that. But I think we've also been in different situations and circumstances where we weren't afraid one minute, and out of nowhere, like we just start to be afraid, and we know it wasn't a soul thing. We knew it was a demonic attack,
Yeah.
a demonic influence. And so I guess that's her question. How do you discern between the two?
I mean, because I think fear is natural, like in the sense of like, let's say you're driving when it's snowing and then your car loses, control and you skid. Like that's a natural fear, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, whereas I feel like if it's something demonic, I feel like there's, like Kevin said, there's extra layers, and I feel like there's strongholds. So it actually torments you more than it being something. I don't know if that makes sense.
Gotcha.
Yeah, she
Joey
gave a
just
clarification.
commented.
Yeah.
She said, not demonic, LOL, like fear of the Lord.
LOL.
Sorry, Zoe.
Well, I feel like the fear of the Lord brings life. I think that's probably the best way. The fear of the Lord, it isn't limiting or restricting, but it's actually freeing, and I think the fruit is life.
Yeah.
I think that's how you'll know.
Yeah. That's good.
Yeah.
I know for me, when
I keep answering the demonic version.
Yo, I think that'd be a fun topic too. But I know for me, like a fear of the Lord, when it comes upon me, automatically it's just like this. I don't know how to explain it in that moment, but it's not a fear that I feel. For example, when I'm afraid of a situation or when I'm afraid of a person, I know like when the fear of the Lord comes upon me, it's as if nothing else matters in that moment. And the only thing that literally my thought is about is this, man, God, you're too good. Like you're too big. And so I know for me, that's how it impacts me. And right away, what ends up happening, I can't stop. I know this sounds weird, but it just almost feels like there's more love that I have for God when that comes upon me
I think that's
versus when there's fear, like human fear. I know that I'm more in love with the situation or the circumstance, as weird as that sounds. Yeah.
I would also say this. I think like human fear, shame is attached with it.
Oh, that's
and
good.
like, you know what I mean? And like you're hiding something and there's a fear there. But I think fear of the Lord brings kind of like what P. Sam said, like life and light. Like, know that, let's say hypothetically, you're stuck with a decision and you know what, you have the fear of the Lord in that moment. Like, you know that even if you make the quote unquote the harder choice, it ultimately there's no shame attachment to it. If that makes
so
sense.
good.
Yeah.
We got a question from Christine. How do you let go of the fear of other people's judgment of you? That's a great question, Christine.
Story of my life. Just kidding.
Yeah, let's spotlight view Josh and speaker view on Josh.
How do you let go of the fear of other people's judgment of you?
I mean, I could start. Proverbs 29 talks about how the fear of man will prove to be a snare. But let me look it up. The fear of man.
Fact check.
The fear of man will prove to be a snare, but whoever trusts in the Lord is kept safe. I really believe, kind of going back to the fear of man, fear of God. I really feel like the opposite of fear of man is actually the fear of God. And I think it's about focus. I think it's about focusing on what God has to say and valuing what his opinions more than others. And I think the tension in that is like, if someone says something hurtful to your face, that feels so much more real than John 3:16 in the Bible, But I think it's the discipline of really trying to focus in on the Lord and trusting in God and believing in what he says. So Proverbs 29:25, to those who are watching, the fear of man will prove to be a snare, but whoever trusts in the Lord shall be kept safe. And I want to use that as the jumping point for this, for you guys to add on to. Anyone?
I mean, I think something that I've actually seen as a theme just throughout the New Testament, reading like the story of Jesus, is a lot of times like Pharisees or even like Pontius Pilate, like when they're about to make like a bad decision, it actually says like, and he was afraid of the people, or he was looking to see like the people react, or but they were afraid of what people would say. Like, so I think that proverb just goes hand in hand, where it's just like just kind of seeing in scripture like the people that had fear of man, like where did that lead to? And that's not to say like, you know, this is what's going to happen, so you have to just let go of it. But I think it just goes back to understanding who is like the ultimate judge. You know, like it doesn't matter. Like people won't decide your value. Like people don't get to decide where you live in eternity, but it's just God Himself, and it's just what, you know, how He views you, like the weight of that versus you know, anything else.
Yeah. I know for me, I don't know about you guys, but for me, overcoming fear of man, fear of other people's judgments, it's been a process that really started since 2016. Now, it wasn't like a one-time moment. The first time I realized I had it was 2016, and that's when I intentionally started working on it. But I would say this, I would say it's a daily fight, if that makes sense. It's like the situational daily fight. So whenever I automatically get to a place where I'm thinking about, oh, what will other people say about me? How will that person respond? Especially when it comes to preaching. I don't know why, but especially when I'm asked to preach, I automatically worry and think about, what will they say about me? Will they say I'm a good preacher? Will they say I'm anointed? Will they say I'm on fire? Different things like that. And so I know, to be honest, it still happens. And so whenever that happens, I always choose in that moment, you know what, I'm going to walk in the opposite spirit. And for me, what the opposite spirit is, that's really ministered to me, is Matthew 3:17 and John 13. Matthew 3:17, where after Jesus gets baptized, he hears the voice from the Father say, "This is my son whom I'm so pleased with." That set me free a lot. That right now the Father is speaking that over me. But then also John 13, where Jesus washes his disciples' feet. But right before it says Jesus knew who he was, he knew who the Father was, and he knew where he was going. So I just needed to always remind myself of that. That I know, Danny, right now, God has given you a word. Danny, you're his son. Danny, he loves you. He approves you. And so when I kind of let that sink in and soak in, then situationally and daily, I choose not to let fear of man overcome me.
No, that's so good.
Yeah.
I just want to say this before I forget. I feel like if we did 1 week on insecurity, I think would be really good.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. But I think
I got insecurity stories.
Yeah. The 8th grade dance again. No, but I think what you said is so good, because I think it is normal to wrestle with this, because I feel like the opposite of never wrestling with it means you're actually a sociopath. Like real talk, right? Like if you don't care about what people actually think, there's actually something like you're off, you know?
Yeah.
But I think what you said, Danny, helps so much, because it is a constant wrestling, but it's a refocusing. And I love it because you frame it in love, because I could either try to impress people or I could choose to love them.
Come on.
And I think if we choose to love, then we're being proactive and not caring what they think, because we're choosing to love rather than impress. So
yeah. Wow. That's so good. Yeah.
I would say something practically also, and I say this very humbly. I agree with what everyone's saying: identity, fear of the Lord, understanding what the Lord speaks and says about you. But I think practically also, just in my experience, and I say this very humbly, but like I think there's also a part of it where you can't get caught up in everything that people judge you about, because I feel like the reality is like most likely those people who do have judgment towards you or misunderstanding towards you, they're not the closest people in your life who actually know you. You know what I mean? So then there's a part of it practically where you kind of have to just like take it for what it is and kind of like have thick skin and a soft heart. And that's what I mean, that like you have to have a humility with it. And if the close people in your life have a judgment or a misunderstanding with you, then I think you can take that as feedback, because maybe you're not seeing something that they can. And so
No.
I don't know, that's how I kind of process it too, along with everyone's saying. Yeah.
It's good.
That's so good. Thick skin. Come on.
Thick skin with 3 C's.
Thick.
Thick.
That looks like all of the questions on YouTube in regards to any topic regarding fear. Yeah. And that's the end of our question on YouTube.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone, for asking questions.
Thanks, everyone.
Yeah. But I'm just trying to say these topics before I forget. By insecurity, I thought of one before too, but I can't remember what it is now. Yeah. But
Insecurity would be a really good one. That would be.
It would.
Like insecurity in leadership, I think, is a very real one. Yeah, just in general, because I think everyone deals with that kind of stuff. But yeah, thank you everyone for asking questions. And yeah, to wrap up, Kevin.
Yeah. So I mean, I'm just gonna give a short, I guess, recap of some key things we kind of talked about. But I think at the same time, I want to mix in just kind of like an exhortation, just to kind of leave you guys with in regards to just the topic of fear. And I think some of the key things we said was a lot of times overcoming fear involves taking risks, but then obviously it's about walking in balance. It's not just about going crazy doing everything, but it's about using wisdom, but at the same time understanding that there's room to fail. And the important thing about failing is it's good to have people around you that you can fail around and take risks with, because they'll be there to be kind of like your safety net, give you any feedback, and just be able to pick you up when you need the encouragement. And it's okay to fail. Use each failure as a lesson that you learn from, and build upon that. Always be someone that's always learning from everything. And there's this quote that I heard that kind of wraps up, I guess, like a big part of it, but I don't know the exact like quote, but this is the gist of it. Sometimes the quote is like, sometimes courage doesn't mean there's no fear, but it means doing it while you're afraid. So with that, at the end of it all, fearful situations, it may never change or it may never be gone. But fear itself, it can be overcome with just a shift in perspective. And I think some things you need to remember is, who you are and whose you are. You're a child of God. That's your identity. A child of God. You're God's child. So if you remember, who you are and whose you are, I think that's a big thing to get you just out of fear, overcoming fear, and understanding that, if something like that doesn't comfort you, I think, we just keep going after the truth of who God is. Because I think once we understand and grasp who God is, I think all those things come, with it. And then I think with that, we see that fearful situations now become adventure. Fearful situations now become, a testimony waiting to happen. And fearful situations turn, what the enemy meant for evil to what God uses for good. And I just want to leave you with the final truth that God will never leave nor forsake you, that He is always with you. He's always been with you and always will be with you. So I hope that helps a lot. And I just want to pray, for everyone that's just watching real quick, just to kind of wrap up. So God, we just thank you so much for even teaching us fear. And God, we just ask that you redeem it in a way that it can be used as a tool for us. And we thank you that, you allow fear to be a tool to show us what's on the other side, which could lead to our destiny. So God, we just ask just for more wisdom as we walk through this life, and the biggest truth to resonate in all of our hearts all throughout the days, and which is that you'll never leave nor forsake us, and that you love us. You're not against us, but you're for us. We love you in Jesus' name.
Amen. Thanks, Kevin. That was powerful. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in to our nice experiment 2.0 Volume 2 Leadership Roundtable. But yeah, I love it. on the other side of overcoming fear is your destiny. So
Come on.
yeah, bless everyone who's tuning in. Guys, same time next week.
Yeah.
Doing this every
Sounds
week.
good.
I just have to ask because
This is what I look forward to every week now, to be honest.
highlight of
Same.
the week.
It's fun.
Yeah, should we
Same.
just, even if quarantine ends, should we just never do a monthly gathering again? just do this. Yeah.
Oh man.
If there's sponsors, hit us up.
Yeah.
We'll do ads. Yo, Poland Spring, hit me up right now, yo.
Pellegrino.
Come
Yeah.
on.
Kirkland.
Yeah. Yo, Kirkland brand. What was that? Costco? Is that Kirkland?
Yeah, Costco.
Yo, Costco, hit us up, But yeah, this was fun. And then we'll do this again next week. We have more things coming for everyone to encourage and just give some hope and laughter this upcoming week. Schedules are being worked out right now in terms of what we have in store. But IG Live at Pursuit NYC. Tuesday night at 8, we have Ali Farrell from Resting Place. It's going to be on IG Live, I think. And Thursday, we have our regional prayer meeting on Zoom. And I think we're going to continue streaming on Pursue NYC. And then maybe you could catch one of us or a couple of us on some of the IG Lives as well. But continue following for any updates and changes. And God bless everyone. We love you guys. And have a good night. Have a good Sunday. Yeah, that's it.
Peace.
Peace, everyone.
See y'all next
See
week.
ya.